Master Takahashi, aka Master Higgins in the US and Master Wiggins in Europe, is a stand-up guy who's loyal to his main squeeze, the island beauty Tina. In the original Japanese versions of these games, with perhaps exception to just one entry, Tina is always the one he's in love with. They start out dating, then they're seen living together. They even get married. But what if I were to tell you that this humble, grass-skirted guy, faithful to his bikini-clad gal, was done dirty in the Western translations? It's true. The English localizations for the series tell a very different story of an indecisive, philandering man bouncing not just across floating springs in bonus rooms, but bouncing between many women too. This is the tale of a foreign hero's love life so misunderstood that his one lady becomes 5, and they mostly all end in heartbreak. To set the stage, in 1986, Sega published an arcade game by Westone with a simple premise called Wonder Boy. Playing as the titular hero, this game sees Boy, or Tom Tom, traversing a tropical setting to rescue his beloved Tina, later known as Tanya. Hudson Soft obtained the rights for a port to the Nintendo Entertainment System, but they swapped out the characters, most notably replacing the protagonist with Toshiyuki Takahashi, aka Takahashi Meijin, or Master Takahashi. He was a spokesperson for the company at the time, and a Japanese celebrity in the gaming sphere. He's known in his homeland as 16-Shot Takahashi, for his incredible trigger speed of 16 button presses per second. Takahashi admitted in an interview with Hirata's Bar that his actual recorded speed is 17 shots per second, but he rounded down to 16 because it sounded more computer-like. What a guy. The man's a legend, though outside of Japan, the series' star was renamed Master Higgins, with everything but alternate characters and a much improved soundtrack that isn't incredibly repetitive. Wonder Boy and Adventure Island's debut games are almost identical, though both series split pretty drastically, with most all of Wonder Boy's sequels changing setting to focus on fantastical, medieval themes that integrate Metroid-esque role-playing mechanics like acquiring gear that grants new abilities, allowing access to different areas. Adventure Island, on the other hand, kept the tropical atmosphere and mainly continued to expand upon the original's arcade roots with purely action platforming gameplay. It's weird because it feels like we got two separate timelines for an evolution of a series. But with that out of the way, I'd like to now get into the actual story of the Adventure Island games, and wow, for what little we have, it's quite the rickety roller coaster of love. There's not much to go off of from the NES version, just the introduction and brief in-game cutscenes, but even this poses a problem. Before we forget about Wonder Boy, you know how I said the characters were changed for Adventure Island's release? Besides the player character, the final boss, King, was mainly now referred to as the Evil Witch Doctor, aka King Killer, used once in the manual and much later exclusively in Adventure Island the beginning on WiiWare. The damsel in distress Tina was renamed Princess Leilani for the NES translation. It's again in that official instruction manual, but the in-game dialogue wasn't altered in any way besides the removal of the Yatane Takahashi line at the end and still reads Tina. To try and correct this error, the localizers made the interesting decision to have them be two separate characters for Adventure Island 2. Princess Leilani being the girl rescued in the first game, with Tina rewritten to be her sister. Unfortunately, this doesn't really work, as they're still the exact same person in Japan, and it doesn't explain why Tina's at the end of the first game. Though, to be fair, I'm sure the majority of players didn't see that end screen anyway. The levels in Worlds 7 and 8 especially are so ridiculously difficult that according to Game Center CX, it was rumored in Japan at the time of its release that an ending didn't actually exist. I beat the game on Virtual Console, but it took me forever, because I refused to make a save state mid-level. Regardless, what a headache. Mario solved this better. Imagine if Nintendo tried to pass Princess Toadstool off as a separate character to Peach. If you're not familiar with what happened there, her name was always Peach in Japan, but Toadstool in the West. At the time of Super Mario 64, they finally decided to start establishing her name as being Peach globally. So, Nintendo of America introduced this by having her sign the letter to Mario as Princess Toadstool Peach. An elegant solution. The whole Tina name debacle doesn't even end there, though. The next game to be released, Super Adventure Island, throws a wrench or stone axe in this whole thing. You see, like I said before, the name of Higgins' sweetheart is always the same in Japanese. It is Tina every single time, with exception to this first Super Famicom release, where she is inexplicably called Gina, Miss Jungle, instead. Take a look at the Japanese kana here for reference. It seems to be a deliberate choice, rather than a spelling mistake, because this Gina name is used consistently in all official published material about the story of this game. I don't know for certain, of course, but I and fellow Adventure Island archaeologist VG Museum, or Ray VGM, who I met recently on the Hardcore Gaming 101 forums, agree that there was intentionality in this change, and that Hudson Soft wanted her to be a different girl, even though they pretty much look the same. That being said, if this is true, they changed their minds again, because she goes back to being Tina with every subsequent game. This is the outlier. The only time his love interest was ever referred to as being a different person in the original language. Because of this, though, the Localization team, who, remember, already made the decision that Higgins has been romantically involved with two separate girls, was probably validated seeing this Miss Jungle Gina because she became Jeannie Jungle, spelled with one N. Remember that now. So it appears that Gina's title of Miss Jungle of the island became part of her actual last name. Then we have New Adventure Island, the new Super Mario Bros. Of Adventure Island. And get this, the English manual states that today is the day that Master Higgins weds Tina, the new Miss Island. Alright, so if we assume that the timeline of these events match the release order of these games, we are to believe that Tina, the sister of the woman Higgins rescued in the OG Adventure Island, has upstaged Miss Jungle, the beauty queen Higgins dumped her for, taking the more grandiose title of Miss Island. Higgins, apparently caring only for status, is impressed by this, so he proposes to her, leaving Jeannie Jungle as yesterday's news. Tina stole her fame and her man. Damn. Okay, so things get even hairier from here. Space Harrier. Wrong genre and franchise. But I will talk about aliens soon. Super Adventure Island 2, continuity-wise, seems to be the next game in the series as a direct continuation of where this one left off. Tina and Higgins are newlyweds, honeymooning to another island by way of rich luxury, aka taking a wooden raft out to sea without a sail. The epitome of royalty. However, the next game to chronologically release is Adventure Island 3. Really, not a lot happens here story-wise. He and Tina are getting intimate on a deserted islet, when a UFO suddenly swoops in and abducts her, for reasons unknown. Maybe they needed her banana. Whatever the case, Higgins saves the day, and they resume their usual activities. Note that the girl in Japanese is Tina, but, you're gonna love this. Let's just crack open that US instruction booklet, and it's freaking Jeannie Jungle. Jeannie spelled with two N's now. Did she go to the island's local judicial branch and add the N by choice? Is this another girl named Jeannie Jungle, albeit spelled slightly differently? It's really not a good look either way, because in this cursed timeline, Higgins has separated with his new bride to hook up with a fourth girl. Or he's got a twisted thing for his exes, because he regretted marrying Tina and went back to Jeannie. Adventure Island 4 is easy. This was a Japanese-only entry, so the girl is Tina, and the two live together. They do sleep in separate beds, but not to worry, they're still very much in love still.
Beautiful!
Since there's only a fan translation available, we can skip this one. Which finally brings us to Super Adventure Island 2. And it's very much a successor to 4 in terms of gameplay, but again seems to take place after New Adventure Island because the two are freshly married and off on a honeymoon. I couldn't get access to the Japanese manual, but there is a story page on the official Wii Virtual Console website that's still up for some reason, and it doesn't mention any recent breakups. Cut to the English side, and we're informed that Higgins just barely got out of a disastrous relationship with Jungle Jane. Okay, that's it. Who is Jungle Jane? Is this the same English writer who simply forgot her name and didn't check their previous work, so Jungle Jane is the result of a faulty memory? Is it a new writer who was a big fan of Tarzan? This is baffling to me. Disregarding the idea of fitting these games into a timeline like Zelda, if we just look at the events by order of release, Higgins has abandoned Jeannie Jungle for another similarly named woman, Jungle Jane, and that apparently went horribly, so he went back to Tina, who either accepted his infidelity, if they were still married, or agreed to remarry him. Then the wild events of this game happen. They shipwreck on Waku Waku and both wake up with amnesia. Tina almost marries the island's king, but both of their memories are slowly restored and the game ends with another attempt at a honeymoon. Happily ever after, great. Luckily, this is as far as things go.
This is as far as you go!
Because all future titles are simply reimaginings of that very first game, and Tina is used in all versions. So to recap, in Japanese, Higgins has one main love interest, with exception to Gina, who he dates in one game, and who may or may not be a different person, but nevertheless, he decides to marry Tina, and remains faithful to this woman for the rest of the series. Simple to follow, respectable. They may have briefly separated, but the two get back together and remain a strong couple. They're clearly in love and seem destined to be together. Now, this is a far cry from how Higgins is portrayed in English. The old dog betrayed his first love, Princess Leilani, to hook up with her hotter sister, Tina. But then he got bored with Tina, and the shallow man moved on to the apparently even more smokin' Miss Jungle of the island, Jeannie. Tina got jealous and entered the next supposed beauty competition herself, one-upping Miss Jungle Jeannie to become the even more prestigious Miss Island. This got Higgins' attention, so he proposed to his ex-girlfriend Tina, and the two got hitched. However, he may have been a bit too impulsive, and either divorced Tina to give Jeannie, who recently got a slight name change, another chance. Or he got himself a brand new girl, who happens to also be named Jeannie, though spelled with two N's. That ultimately didn't last very long though, as at some point in between these games, he found himself a new lady friend named Jungle Jane. However, that was an especially toxic relationship. So presumably because he burned all of his other bridges and Tina is the only girl as rash as he is, she accepts his adultery, or agrees to remarry him if they got divorced, and as far as we know, they stay together from then on. Thank goodness. That means that Higgins has been romantically involved with 4, maybe 5 different women. He has no qualms dating the sister of an ex, or going back and forth between lovers. Granted, we don't really know the personalities of these ladies, besides Tina because of her many speaking lines in Super 2. So I don't know, maybe they're terrible people. The only insight we're given is that Jungle Jane and Higgins had a disastrous relationship. So it's very possible the decision to split up was mutual. Of course, it could be that the women are leaving Higgins instead of the other way around. That's the problem with trying to deeply analyze and make sense of an overarching narrative about games with such little text and character screen time. Whether the localizers had it in mind that Higgins is a womanizer, or just a very hapless romantic, his love life is all over the place when it really didn't have to be. I didn't even mention the Game Boy ports of 2 and 3. In the handheld version of 2, confusingly just named Adventure Island, Tina is called Princess Tina. It makes sense, since being the sister of Princess Leilani would, by extension, make her a princess too, but it's still weird when she was never called that before. I also didn't want things to get too initially confusing, but I have to also mention a spin-off of Adventure Island called Bug-tte Honey in order for you to truly get Higgins' full romantic history. It's an anime, based off of a video game that got 51 episodes and a film that's sadly only available in Japanese. That means no English dubs or subtitles exist as of this video. It's got a bunch of references to all sorts of Hudson Soft properties, like Bomberman, who appears as early as the 2nd episode. Strangely enough, it stars Honey Girl, the fairy-like power-up that grants invincibility, and this time she's rescuing her boyfriend, who happens to be Master Higgins. Now, he is referred to in the show as Takahashi Genjin, or Primitive Man Takahashi, instead of the usual Takahashi Meijin. So, you could argue that this is an alternate universe, and these two are not the same characters. However, you should know by now it's never that easy. This spin-off anime got its own spin-off game on Famicom called Takahashi Meijin no Bug-tte Honey, or Takahashi Meijin's Bug-tte Honey. Also, come on, they're the same person. But we can dismiss it as non-canon. This is totally unrelated to anything, but I just need you all to know that in this game, which has Arkanoid-like sub-levels, there is an optional stage that you can enter where unbreakable blocks spell out hell. The only way to exit is via the top of the screen, and it's purposefully very tricky to get there. Good stuff. But anyway, every end screen for the mainline Adventure Island game shows Higgins happily with his girl, snuggling, getting a kiss. Am I missing some statement from the English writers on the futility of lasting love? Is Takahashi secretly some kind of heartbreaker in real life, and the Japanese staff was trying to hint at it with this Gina character? What if the islands these games take place on have some sort of women's sisterhood cult, and they all look eerily similar, and Higgins just got unlucky with each one after the credits? I love series-wide stories, and if it's ridiculous, that's even better. I love going down the rabbit hole. It's cool that his relationship with Tina does progress throughout. It's pretty rare for a game franchise like this to do. But dang, the narrative we got over here was needlessly complicated. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. This series is focused more on gameplay than story after all. But with how much text was in Super 2, it'd be cool to have things cleared up at least a little bit for continuity and world building. I don't blame the writers, I'm just going to assume they were overworked and sleep deprived as was commonplace with game development at the time, but it's funny how convoluted this all became just because of a few name changes and creative liberties taken to justify them. With all that said though, I hope you enjoyed the deep dive. I've been obsessed with this series as of late, so I'm happy to announce a full retrospective I'll be doing with these games, starting with the OG and working up to Super 2, which is one of my favorites ever. I have attempted to do one of these in the past, but I fell off of it, so I promise to not post anything until it's 100% complete. Thank you all for watching, I'll see you next time.